I was on my hands and knees scrubbing coffee stains out of my grandmother's kitchen linoleum when Aunt Selene told the first lie. Poor thing, she sighed to a small knot of funeral guests gathered in the living room, her voice carrying flawlessly through the open doorway. She just can't find proper employment, you see. Cleans houses for cash, no benefits, no prospects, it's heartbreaking. I kept scrubbing. Judging by the stratified layers of dirt, the stain dated back to roughly 1987. Graham had never prioritized housekeeping, which was one of the many reasons I adored her. Does she have anyone? Someone asked. A husband, kids? No, never married. Lives alone in a tiny apartment. I try to help when I can, but she's proud, won't accept handouts. I leaned back on my heels, plunged the sponge into the bucket, and smiled to myself. The water was exactly right, cold enough to cut through grime, warm enough not to split skin. I'd learned that in basic training, along with 1,000 other skills my family would never imagine I possessed. My name is Casey Tillery. I am 47 years old. I am a brigadier general in the United States Army, serving as Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, G3. I oversee roughly 80,000 soldiers across multiple installations. My annual compensation exceeds $200,000, not including allowances and benefits. I hold a master's degree in strategic studies from the Army War College and have advised 3 secretaries of defense on operational planning. My family believes I scrub houses for $40 a day. I allow them to believe it because watching people be confidently wrong is one of life's most underrated pleasures. And my family has been confidently wrong about me for 25 years. It began when I enlisted at 22. My mother, God rest her, cried. My father expressed his disappointment in silence. My Aunt Selene, who had married well and appointed herself the family's social authority, was scandalized. The military, she'd said, dripping pity. Oh, Casey, couldn't you at least finish college first? I had finished college. I held a degree in international relations from Georgetown. But correcting her would have required attention, and they'd already concluded I was making a desperate choice born of limited options and flawed judgment. As the years passed and I rose through the ranks, lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, colonel, and finally general, they constructed an elaborate explanation for my absence from holidays. My vague references to work, my inability to describe what I actually did. Their version went like this: I'd failed out after a few years, too much pressure, not sharp enough, couldn't handle it, now I survived on odd jobs. Retail, maybe waitressing, definitely cleaning houses, scraping by, humiliated, pretending everything was fine. They repeated the story so often it hardened into fact. I never corrected it because, frankly, it amused me. My grandmother knew the truth. She was the only one. She de-served as an army nurse in Vietnam, understood service, respected silence. When I made general 3 years ago, she sent me a card that read, "They're idiots, I'm proud of you. She died last week, heart attack, fast, merciful." And now I was here at her funeral reception, scrubbing her kitchen floor while my relatives displayed their grief and casually erased my real life with every careless assumption. I heard she doesn't even have health insurance, another voice said. An uncle, maybe, I wasn't sure. Living paycheck to paycheck, someone added. One emergency away from disaster. I had full military medical and dental coverage, comprehensive life insurance, and a retirement account robust enough to make most civilians openly weep. But yes. Let's say one emergency from ruin. I finished the floor, emptied the bucket, washed my hands. In the living room, about 40 people drifted through Graham's house, eating grocery store cookies and saying the correct things about memory and loss. The house remained exactly as she'd left it, cluttered, welcoming, overflowing with 50 years of living. Photos crowded every surface, books stacked in corners. A half-completed crossword rested on the coffee table. I'd taken emergency leave to be here. Flew commercial from D.C., changed into civilian clothes in an airport restroom. Drove a rental car to the small Ohio town where I'd grown up. In 36 hours, I'd be back briefing the Joint Chiefs on operational readiness in the Pacific Theater. But at the moment, I was simply Casey, the disappointment who claimed floors. Aunt Selene found me in the kitchen. She was 62, meticulously preserved, married to an admiral, her defining feature and proudest accomplishment. She'd spent 4 decades as a Navy wife, attending the right events, delivering the right remarks, crafting a life entirely dependent on her husband's rank. Casey dear, she said, touching my arm with fingers that had never known abrasion. Thank you for cleaning, you're so good at it, truly. It's a gift to find meaning in simple labor. Someone had to do it. Well, yes, I hope you'll send me an invoice. I know finances are tight. That's generous of you, of course. Family supports family. She lowered her voice. Richard and I have been thinking we may need someone to help around the house, like cleaning, some organizing. I could pay you, say, 200 a week. Would that be useful? I studied her. The pity was sincere, the satisfaction unmistakable. She genuinely believed she was offering charity. That's kind, I said, but I'm rather busy. Oh, I'm sure we can work around your schedule. You can't be that busy. You'd be surprised. She patted my arm. Think about it. The offer stands. She floated back to her audience and I heard the story resume. I offered her work, but she's so proud, I don't know what will become of her. Now that mother's gone, she'll have no one. Graham had left me her house, and her will, the lawyer called yesterday. Everything else, the modest savings, the jewelry was divided among the other grandchildren. But the house, the place where I'd spent every childhood summer, came to me. Along with a note, use it or sell it or burn it down. Just don't let Selene have it. The house was worth maybe $90,000. Not much, but in this town it mattered. Selene had expected it. She hinted repeatedly that she and Richard might retire there someday. Keep it in the family. The will would be read tomorrow at 10. I'd planned carefully, ensured everyone would attend. Especially Aunt Selene's husband, Admiral Richard Nesmith, retired 2-star former naval operations, because service has a way of connecting people. Networks form, names are remembered. This will be magnificent. Now I only had to wait. The afternoon stretched on. Stories were shared, Graham's sharp tongue, her terrible cooking, the way she welcomed anyone who needed a place. Mostly true, she'd been formidable, hilarious, unimpressed by pretension. Around 4, people began to leave. Obligations called them elsewhere. The core family remained cousins, a few uncles, Aunt Selene and her husband. Admiral Nesmith had been quiet all day, standing slightly apart, allowing his wife to perform. He was tall, silver-haired, unmistakably authoritative even in civilian clothes. Slacks, blazer, posture forged by decades of command. I caught his eye across the room and gave a small nod. He returned it, showtime. I entered the living room with a fresh pot of coffee. Aunt Selene stood near the mantel, surrounded by the remaining guests. The real tragedy, she was saying, is that Casey could have been something. She was bright as a girl, but she made poor choices. And now, she let the sentence trail off, heavy with implication. What do you think she could have been? Someone asked. Oh, I don't know, Selene said. Something respectable, something with benefits. Not cleaning houses for cash like some. She stopped herself, glanced at me, lowered her voice to a stage whisper. Well, you know, I sat down the coffee pot. You're absolutely right, Aunt Selene. I made terrible choices. She looked startled that I'd heard, then rallied. Oh, darling, I don't mean to be harsh. You've done your best. It's just what? Well, you could have had stability, a real career. Look at Richard, 30 years in the Navy, retired as an admiral. That's success. That's something to be proud of. I looked at Admiral Nesmith. He was watching us with barely suppressed amusement. Admiral Nesmith, I said clearly, you've been very quiet. What do you think constitutes a successful career? He straightened slightly. That's an interesting question, General. The room didn't react. The rank didn't register. They heard the word but didn't process it. Selene laughed. Oh, Richard, you don't have to be polite. We all know Casey's situation, do you? He said. Of course, she cleans houses for cash, no benefits, no future. It's sad really, but she just cleans houses for cash, he said slowly, looking directly at his wife. Yes, I've been telling everyone someone needs to be honest about. He turned to me, stood at attention, and saluted. The room froze. Aunt Seline's jaw dropped. Good to see you again, General Tiller, Admiral Nesmith said, his voice carrying perfect clarity. I appreciate you taking time from your duties at the Pentagon to be here. I know you're briefing the Joint Chiefs next week. The silence was absolute. Every head turned. Every eye was on me. Thank you, Admiral, I said calmly. I appreciate you making the trip. Wouldn't miss it. Your grandmother spoke about you constantly. Very proud of her granddaughter, the Brigadier General. Aunt Celine made a sound like air escaping from a tire. General, Brigadier General, Admiral Namath clarified. One-star Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations G3 commands approximately 80,000 soldiers. Pretty significant role, but you said she cleaned houses, I supplied helpfully. That's what you've been telling everyone, isn't it? For years now, that I scrub floors for $40 a day. You never corrected me, you never asked, you just assumed. And honestly, it was more entertaining to let you be wrong. One of my cousins spoke up. You're a general, like a real general, afraid so, Candace. But you never said you never wore my uniform to family events. Why would I? So you could all ask awkward questions about classified operations. So I could watch you pretend to understand joint doctrine and strategic planning. No thanks, easier to let you think I'd failed. Aunt Celine had gone from white to red to purple. This is a joke, Richard. Tell me this is a joke. No joke, dear, her husband said. I've known General Tiller for 15 years. Brilliant officer, exceptional career. She's being considered for her second star. Actually, she'll probably make Major General before I made my second Admiral rank. But the cleaning, I was scrubbing Graham's floor because it was dirty and I had the time. Because service means doing what needs doing, whether it's commanding a division or cleaning a kitchen. Graham taught me that. My aunt looked at me like I was a stranger. You let me offer you work, $200 a week to clean my house. I remember that was particularly funny. Funny, yes, hilarious actually. You offering me housework when I make $200,000 in a year. You pitying me while I brief secretaries of defense. You explaining career success to someone who commands more people than live in this entire town. I poured myself coffee. It's been a magnificent piece of performance art, Aunt Celine. 25 years of you being confidently wrong. I couldn't have scripted it better. You're cruel, she whispered. Am I, or did you just never bother to know me, never ask real questions? Never consider that your assumptions might be incorrect. Admiral Nesmith cleared his throat. Perhaps I should mention General Tiller holds a master's degree from the Army War College, has served in 3 combat zones, received the Bronze Star for Valor, and was selected for her current position by the Secretary of the Army personally. Just for context, 3 combat zones. Aunt Celine repeated numbly, Iraq twice, Afghanistan once. I was promoted to colonel during my second Iraq tour, made general 4 years later. Graham came to the ceremony. None of the rest of you were invited because you didn't tell us. Why would I? So you could show up and patronize me. Explain military life to someone who'd been living it for 2 decades. No thanks, Graham understood. The rest of you had already decided who I was. I just let you keep believing it. One of the uncles, Jerry, I think, spoke up. This seems unnecessarily deceptive. Does it? Let me ask you something, Uncle Jerry. At Christmas 3 years ago, you spent an hour explaining to me how real careers require strategic thinking and long-term planning. Do you remember what I do for a living? You clean houses. I'm the Army's Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations. I coordinate strategic planning for the largest ground force in the world. I literally write doctrine on strategic thinking. But you spent an hour explaining career strategy to me like I was a child who'd never held a real job. He had no response. That's what I mean, I continued. You all built this elaborate narrative where I'm a failure, a cautionary tale, someone who needs your pity and advice. And I let you because watching you be wrong was more entertaining than constantly defending myself. Aunt Celine found her voice again. You're saying this is my fault, that I should have known. I'm saying you should have asked. In 25 years, not one of you asked about my actual work, my actual life. You just filled in the blanks with assumptions that made you feel superior. But military people usually talk about their service. Do we? Or is that just what you think from movies? Most of what I do is classified. I can't discuss operations or planning or intelligence. So when asked about work, I deflect, which you interpreted as embarrassment instead of operational security. Admiral Nesmith was watching his wife with an expression I couldn't quite read, not anger exactly, something closer to disappointment. Celine, he said quietly. Your niece is one of the most accomplished people in this room, and you've been telling people she cleans houses. I didn't know, you didn't ask, that's different, you knew, she turned on him. You've known this whole time, of course I knew, she's a flag officer, we all know each other, I've served on committees with her, read her operational assessments, she's brilliant. And you never told me, she asked me not to. And honestly, watching you embarrass yourself seemed like a fair consequence for never bothering to know your own niece. The room had gone very quiet. People were looking at each other, recalculating years of assumptions. My cousin and Marie spoke up. So when you said you couldn't make my wedding because of work, I was coordinating a division-level exercise in Germany. 3,000 troops, TUI operation. Sorry, I missed the chicken dance, but I had responsibilities. And Christmas 2 years ago, Afghanistan. Spent it in a forward operating base eating MREs and planning logistics. Merry Christmas. They were all staring at me now, seeing maybe for the first time an actual person instead of their own projection. I don't understand why you're angry. Aunt Celine said, we thought we were helping, being supportive. You thought you were being superior. There's a difference. You got to feel generous by pitying me. Got to feel successful by comparing yourselves to someone you decided was failing. And I let you because it kept you out of my actual life. That's harsh, Casey, is it? You've been telling people at my grandmother's funeral that I clean houses for cash at her funeral, while she's not even cold. Using her death as an opportunity to broadcast my supposed failure to anyone who will listen. Her face crumpled. I was trying to explain why you were cleaning the floor. I was cleaning the floor because it was dirty, because Graham taught me that all work has dignity, because I'm not above manual labor just because I have a star on my uniform. I sat down my coffee. But you couldn't conceive of that. In your world, people who clean floors are failing, so I must be failing. The idea that I might choose to clean, might find value in it, might simply be helping at my grandmother's house. That never occurred to you. Admiral Nesmith stepped forward. Perhaps we should all take a moment. No, I held up a hand. I'm done with moments, done with being diplomatic. Aunt Celine, you spent 25 years thinking I'm incompetent. Congratulations.